Now, I'm going to continue in a minute, but I want to summarize this point. Traditionally, since Martin Luther, and even since the early church fathers, the opponents of Paul were described as the Jews. The Jews were those that were opponents of the Apostle Paul. Yes, in one or two cases, especially in Ephesus, the Jews opposed him. Why? He was taking away their business. You can do anything to a Jew, but don't take away his livelihood. Yeah? So there were times that Jews opposed Paul, but not on spiritual ground, on business ground. These people that are his opponents, that he calls dogs and mutilators of the flesh, they are not Jews. They are Gentiles who converted to Judaism. They are Gentiles who decided that they want to be circumcised and be Jews. Why they made that decision, I can understand. The majority of the church was Jewish. The culture of the church was Jewish. They were not, and they didn't want to feel like second-class citizens. They didn't have to feel like second-class citizens. But when you're in a minority, you always feel that way. And that's true about every minority, in every country, in every case. Even if you have a doctorate from Harvard and you're a part of a minority, you still feel like you're second class. That you don't get your fair share of respect or your fair share of anything. So that was the case sociologically that was happening in the early church. And not only in the early church. In every synagogue in the diaspora, the same thing happened. How do I know that? Because I know the Jewish literature of the period. All the synagogues had this problem with Gentiles who wanted to be super Jews. The Messianic movement in America and in Israel has the same problem now. We've got a lot of Gentiles who want to be super Jews. They tie their tassels on their belt loops. And they have the biggest kippas, yarmulkes in Yiddish. Yeah? That's true in every Messianic community that I know in America. I was just telling some of my friends about a case in New Mexico a few years back when the Messianic movement had a regional conference there. And there was an Israeli guy and his family, a Moroccan Jew from north of Israel, that for the first time went to a Messianic conference. And he sees this great big guy with a big fur hat like the super Orthodox wear, black clothes, everything. And he asked me, is this guy Jewish? Well, I said, look at that, he's dressed like a Jew. Go find out. So he goes, and he was shorter than I am, this Moroccan Jew. And he goes and he tugs on the guy's sleeve, and he starts speaking to him in Hebrew, and the guy turns to him and says, hello, brother, the Lord just hadn't given me that language yet. Yeah? So that kind of a phenomena happens now, and it happened in the first century also. There were Gentiles who wanted to be Jews, wannabe Jews. And they were opposing Paul. Why were they opposing Paul? Because Paul didn't think that it is right for Gentiles to convert to Judaism, because it waters down the work of the Messiah. It waters down the promises and the prophecies of Isaiah that the house of God will be a house of prayer for all nations. Because of that, Paul opposed Gentiles converting, and he opposed Jews assimilating. I'll just read to you one text from 1 Corinthians 7, but you should read the full text as homework. Verse 17 of 1 Corinthians 7. But as God has distributed to each one, as the Lord has called each one, so let him continue to walk. And so I ordain in all the churches. I ordain in all the churches, not all the Americans understand that. It means I am legally making an ordinance, a law, for all the churches. It's a command, a law, a legal command for all the churches. What is the command? Verse 18, was anyone called while he was circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Again, I'm going to read that text. Was anyone called while circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Such a super glue has not been invented yet. Is anyone called uncircumcised? Let him not become circumcised. This is a law that Paul is legislating for all the churches. Let each one remain in the calling that God called him.